The lost treasure of the Knights Templar and pirates buried gold deep underground, and the Vikings sailed there before Columbus, according to legend. However, new evidence suggests that the Romans may have also been on Oak Island. The search for these artifacts was difficult and nearly cost a man his life. One of the biggest mysteries of all is Bole 10X, a deep, dangerous, water-filled shaft that has been the focus of treasure hunters for decades. 80's Dan Blanken's ship is one of Oak Island's most devoted. Because borehole 10X is 235 feet deep and begins with a 181-foot vertical drop through a reinforced steel and concrete shaft, it was not an easy excavation, despite searchers' belief that it could lead to whatever was very deep down. Narrows into a tunnel that is barely 27 inches wide, 44 tons long, and completely obscured by murky water with no light. Two professional divers, Harvey Morash and Michael Gartz, were brought in to investigate 10X by the Lagena brothers. They were aware of the risks but were unprepared for what transpired. Michael would act as a safety diver while Harvey descended, and the crew on the surface would stay in touch through an underwater communication system. However, things started to fall apart a few minutes into the dive with no signal or voice. The team on the surface had no idea if Michael was safe, and they tried to call his name but could not find him. In summary, Oak Island has been a mystery for centuries, with legends suggesting Vikings sailed there before Columbus, the lost treasure of the Knights Templar, and pirates buried gold deep underground. A chemistry professor who specializes in metal analysis performed a more thorough scan and discovered that the sword contained a high amount of zinc, which was not normally used in ancient Roman bronze. This suggests that the sword was made of modern brass rather than ancient bronze. However, not everyone was persuaded, as some noted that some ancient mines contain naturally occurring zinc that could have been converted into Roman bronze through natural processes. A new knowledge of early transatlantic migration and the history of the island of the Oak Island sword has resulted from the team's efforts to determine whether the sword was actually ancient. In the history of the island, discovery has generated debate. While some experts contend that it is a contemporary fake or the result of 19th century craftsmanship, others think that because of its distinctive metal composition at discovery, it may be a real ancient item. For more than 2 centuries, Oak Island has teased history buffs and treasure hunters with various finds that seem to contradict this. For instance, Roman-style crossbow bolts that matched the design of bolts used by the Roman soldiers were discovered on the island. Some contend that they came via trade routes much later in history, maybe during the era of European exploration. Others propose that this could indicate that the Romans or someone with a weapon came to this region of the world much before the Vikings or Columbus. Researchers continue to debate the famous lead cross found at Smith's Cove. One theory suggests it may be even older, possibly dating back to the Roman era, while another links it to the Knights Templar, a mysterious order that allegedly traveled across the Atlantic to hide their treasures. One of the largest debates in the history of the island has been raised by the discovery of the Oak Island sword, which has raised questions about whether the Romans actually lived there. The island is known for presenting items that don't make sense, including what some people claim to be Roman artifacts. The little North American island of Oak Island has been the scene of several archaeological disc finds and discussions. After the cross was examined, the lead composition was linked to southern France, which was formerly a Roman colony. This could indicate that an expedition from antiquity arrived at Oak Island millennia before anybody else did. Researchers have been trying to read the inscriptions on the 90T stone found deep within the money pit for years, and some people think the markings resemble Phoenician or Roman Eros letters. This is another intriguing discovery. The odd stone platforms and roadways discovered beneath Smith's Cove were purposefully constructed by someone rather than existing naturally. Some academics think these structures mimic ancient European engineering and may be related to Roman aqueducts or highways. Another significant controversy arose when a Roman coin was purportedly discovered close to Oak Island, but its precise origin remained unknown. This begs the issue of why an ancient Roman coin would be in the vicinity of Oak Island. Although the enigmatic wreckage at Mahone Bay has not yet been thoroughly investigated, sonar scans indicate that it may be ancient, possibly dating back to the 1400s or earlier, predating Columbus. If there is any evidence linking this wreck to the Romans, it would be revolutionary. but others believe it may be far older and potentially connected to medieval or ancient seafaring fars. Strange discoveries on Oak Island, like wooden platforms and underground tunnels, imply that someone was around for a long period before the official chronology permits. The problem with that theory is that many of these artifacts and structures predate documented colonial history. The sheer number of unexplained artifacts and structures suggests someone was here long ago, whether it was explorers, treasure hunters, or an unidentified civilization history leaving its mark on the island. Skeptics contend that many of these discoveries could be explained by later European travelers or early settlers.
By striking a boulder at the bottom of the hole, they may still be required to reach the firebox area. Those fragments with the hollow sound could be protecting the fireplace after all. Currently, we are still determining how the temporary superstructure was constructed. It could have been built with rocks or something entirely distinct. However, this is not the only event that occurred at Oak Island. Astonished that the entire world. There is still more. Both the stone wall on Lot 26 and the pine tar furnace on Lot 15 contained fragments of charcoal. That indicates the presence of fire. They also discovered a piece of pottery, which provides additional insight into what the object may be. The images depict numerous kiln structures discovered by the University of York throughout Europe. They date back to the Roman era, proving that this technology is not new. Immediately, focus on the kiln on Lot 5. Observing the proximity to the water is intriguing. Regardless, let's dissect this and have some fun. First, visualize the mysterious setting in which we find ourselves. This location may be optimal for a covert operation. What if we told you a kiln could be hidden there? A kiln indeed. Consider alternative applications for this kiln before imagining a group of potters creating exquisite pottery. Our minds are racing and we are thinking about pipelines. Pipes indeed. This excellent hypothesis proposes Oak Island may contain a system of flood tunnels. What is this then? This is supported by evidence such as the valve and the cavity beneath the trapdoor. In this case, things are becoming increasingly intriguing. Perhaps intelligent infrastructure is used to construct the underground tunnels. They may be developing a hydraulic system to control the flow of water. However implausible it may seem, let's experiment with it anyway. It is prudent to use pipelines instead of open tunnels. The island's rugged terrain was only marginally suitable for tunneling. If water were to flow through certain areas, they might erode or collapse. Why then not utilize pipes to maintain a constant flow without endangering a collapse? At this point, things become even more pleasurable. Let's investigate the origins of pottery, my companion. We are discussing a technique that has existed since Roman times: clay pipes. Before, these pipelines were formed around a wooden structure, but it was difficult to connect them seamlessly. They ingeniously employed the potter's wheel, which originated in ancient Samaria around 3500 BCE. Incredible, right? Nevertheless, there's more. We should talk about glazing. You know, the protective layer that prevents water from permeating clay and causing damage to ceramics. Roman glazing techniques were extraordinarily inventive. They utilized salt, lead, and tin, invented later, to create an impregnable, complex covering. At this point, things begin to become somewhat chaotic. A pottery instructor asserts that adding saline or ocean water to clay causes its surface to bloom. The kiln firing process produces a beautiful salt patina. Can you imagine the ancient Romans using ocean water to produce these beautiful orange peel textured pipes? Mind-blowing. Let's discuss the pottery object discovered by Laird on the island. Laird believes it dates from the first half of the 18th century, but who knows? It could, after all, be a conduit. What is it? Though it does not appear to be a conventional straight pipe. Not every conduit needs to be straight. This component may be included in a conduit system,